Mr. Chris Wagner.
Awesome. Frankly, I believe in a thing called data mesh. It is something that's near and dear to my heart because I believe this is reality. What the heck is the data mesh? Well, you ask Copilot. Copilot is going to give you this definition, and if this makes sense to you, fantastic. You are a master at data, and I congratulate you. To me, this meant a lot of hooey until I realized what the heck is it really that we're talking about here? Data mesh is really how every organization on the planet manages their data. They're just doing some of the principles or some of the things that are inside of data mesh really, really badly, or they're not even conscious of it at all. Okay, so this is actually what's going on inside your companies, regardless of how much you are or are not following the data mesh principles. Okay, so um, just remember that. Okay, so like if you think of data mesh as like a religious type of thing, right? And like with any religion, you're going to follow it to one degree or another. You'll find that everyone is a follower of the data mesh religion. So it's fantastic. It is really good. Don't worry about it. Okay, but the reality is we've got those central teams that manage data, but then there's all these other organizations, your sales, your operations, HR, accounting, finance, right? All these different areas that have data and manage it. And what we found is that most companies think, yeah, you know what? I own my data in my central place and I own 90 to, you know what? I own 98% of data consumed inside my organization. Well, one of the things that the cloud and a lot of these modern tools are allowing us to see and accurately track is how often is that true? Are people 98% of the time or even 90% of the time consuming data from your central IT managed resources? And that answer is incredibly short sighted. The answer is just straight out no. In fact, time and time again, as we do assessments and we do an analysis, this central data model that people think is 90% of their data, they think it's this huge thing. That's not the case. We're finding that it's this small, tiny little thing that sometimes is as little as 4% of the data inside of an organization is being consumed from those central models, from those central sources. Everyone's taking data, they're extracting it out into Excel spreadsheets, they're dumping it into Access databases, they're doing
Say it isn't so, Chris. Say it
it,
isn't so.
I know, but they're doing 3 or more hops over 90% of the time from your central data teams. So all of that governance that you've been trying to build in, not necessarily for naught, but it is something that is just we've been very blind to. Yes, it is. They're dumping it to Excel, right? They're doing the thing we all hate, right? But it's going to be okay. Data mesh is really going to help us down this to drive down that number from 90 something to much lower. Who am I? Why the heck should you be talking to me? Well, maybe you shouldn't. I don't know. But my name is Chris Wagner, Director of Data Solutions over at Baker Tilly. I do consulting now, so like if you need a consultant, like I can help you. I am also the founder of KratosBI.com, home of the data gods. Where
I love
like
that.
just for that one little stinger, I got that for. I write feature articles about people doing amazing stuff over out in the data world. I publish a whole bunch of content out there too about resource stuff. You really get out there, and I got a lot of stuff available for people. All right. Also, a Microsoft Data Platform MVP. This is year number 4, maybe 5. We'll see. And I got a whole bunch of other awards. You can find me on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, or X. I guess I should update this slide. But you can find me in all of these places, and please do. Okay. Now, let's talk about what does the architecture when it comes to working inside of a data mesh look like. All right. We kind of hit on it where you're going to have each of the domains inside of your organization is going to manage and provide all of the stuff throughout your organization. So the big thing that people think incorrectly is that the architecture of a data mesh is going back to siloed data. That is explicitly wrong. Okay. Every part of a data mesh has an obligation to provide that data to other parts of that organization in a consistent, reliable, repeatable manner with contracts. And we'll get into more of that details in a bit. All right. Um, Now, this is the simplified view. The reality is, if we were to, in very, very large organizations, you're going to see that this gets incredibly complex with all sorts of other domains and areas that are providing it. In fact, you might have dozens upon dozens of domains that are managing your data. But we want to try and keep it simple. We want to keep to the core principles here. Number one, it's domain oriented. Okay. So if your domain owns that data, you provide all the you have to then provide that data as a product to the rest of the organization so that they can consume it in a way that they need to consume it. Okay, so that does not mean you as an owner cannot allow, like, hey, I'm not going to allow people to query my data. Incorrect. Right? It doesn't mean you're only going to provide a report or you're only going to do something or another. So you're going to have to provide your data in a bundled experience that provides resources to your entire organization. Now we're going to be talking about, that's the product that you're going to be providing so that people can self-service and self-select the data they're consuming. Right? Maybe it's as simple as drag and drop from a semantic model that you're providing, but maybe it's also that they want to have access to the individual dimensions or fact tables that you'll then be providing along with it. Okay, it's all about the self-service. And then what IT's biggest role here is a federated governance, making sure that everyone inside the organization is playing right, understands their obligations, is following the security principles, honors their product, and understands how that works. Okay. Now, we kind of hit on what does domain oriented look like. Data as a product, though, is very interesting because when we talk about data as a product, you're going to be offering up different services, and from within your domain, you might have different levels of offerings that you have. So, for example, at that pro code layer, at that enterprise space, you may offer a rich, robust layer of access that runs the gambit from everything from lake houses to warehouses to semantic models to templated notebooks or templated pipelines. To like officially certified and blessed reports that are consumable by your organization, or data science APIs that are in production and people build into their products. That could be a contract layer that you're providing inside your organization. Now, if your domain does not necessarily rise to that level of the enterprise or the department, your offerings may start to come in at a lower tier. And I really like to line this up with the pyramid of self-service that Microsoft has been using for a long time, which we kind of have on the left-hand side here, that enterprise, department, team, and individual, because that's who, as a product owner, you're going to need to be able to provide product support too, right? And so you're going to be creating certified content, at that enterprise level, or endorsed content at those lower levels. Regardless, you're going to have a contract that talks through security, that talks through what does it mean to consume the information, what are the responsibilities of you as a product owner, but also what are the responsibilities for the people that are downstream, right? Like how are those people responsible for certifying and showing you that they're not violating row level security, that they're not deviating from the contract that's been put in place. These are all part of becoming data as a product. Okay. Now, some of this is easy to build out and add into Microsoft Fabric. Others are a little more difficult. And we're gonna hang on 1 second here. This is something I show all the time. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a second. All right, can you guys see me? Am I big screen, stuff like that? Yeah?
Yes.
No? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yes.
All right. Oh, where'd it go? I have a bookmark here.
All
right. So this is the development process of all minimum viable product rollouts. Okay. This is not just Fabric. This is not just Microsoft. This is not just Power BI. This is anyone, anywhere. This is if you're doing development, your first deployment's going to suck. Okay. It's just going to suck. The next one's going to be okay. And then it's going to become, yeah, sucky. Okay, great. Yeah. So, okay. Be aware that Fabric is a big product that has many features that are on each of the layers of this deployment, okay, or this continuum. All right. So be aware of that as we go in and as I show you this stuff. So some of the things might not be what you want, but it's going to be okay. You can at least see what they're like, and if they're not okay, if they're at the suck, don't use it. Wait till it gets to the okay phase. And some of the things are going to be like public preview is going to be okay. You're going to say, you know what, this is good enough, right? I've tested it, I've run with it. This, like folders is in public preview. Like there's low risk around folders there. Like I can't fathom what that would f up, right? Like go ahead, use folders, no problem, right? Other things like maybe the rolled security that we're going to be showing in a little bit, that's in public preview. That could really screw some things up. So be careful on what you roll out there until it's been thoroughly tested and vetted. Okay. Um, yeah, exactly. You're using folders in production. That is spot on, right? So, all right. So let's keep going here. All right. Again, the whole idea is that all of these products become self-service so that people can consume anything that they're looking for that's being produced by a different domain, right? So domains can publish and share stuff out. It can be reused. You can even certify. You can make this accessible, right? Like that is the whole entire point of this. Why is this valuable? Why is this something that you should be doing? And so let me start with why this is important too. Okay. So I'll stop sharing as well. So I worked at a very large insurance company, Northwestern Mutual. We had a need to create it was just a report for 3 people. But the product owner had a vision of this being something bigger than what it was. And so we went in with that attitude and we started to leverage what we didn't know was a data mesh architecture, but so it really is a data mesh architecture because we as developers consume those enterprise resources, help shape, guide, model it into something that was not just something that was kind of usable by the 3 people, but had direct scalability to all 30,000 people at the organization. Because we were able to do that for a small group with a big vision, we were able to do that with a small number of resources, and we were able to scale that up rapidly because we were able to work hand in hand with the people who really understood the business and really helped us like shape and craft those solutions. But because those products were available, because in a self-service fashion, we were able to go in and take advantage of the warehouse, take advantage of what they called a mart, but that is just like a flavor of Lakehouse or a flavor of Fabric. And we were able to build our own pipelines. We were able to maintain our own notebooks. We were able to build that out at scale for pennies on actually fractions of a penny on the dollar of what large enterprise projects were able to do. The biggest advantage there is if something like that is successful, great. If it's not successful, kill it and move on, right? So that's the big advantage of encouraging and building this out is you allow that to rapidly unfurl. Now, if we go back, oh, why did that do that? If we go back to this, one of the big things that we talk about are what are the data contracts at each of these levels? What are the coding requirements that it takes to move up this stack from that individual or team where, you know what, it just doesn't matter what you deliver on. Go ahead, throw it together. You're all good as long as you're not risking anyone or causing problems. No, that's fine. But if you understand what the data contract is for the enterprise grade solution or department level or whatever your target is, anyone can then build towards that and gain that advantage. Okay. So that's the advantage of having that set out in a self service environment. Now, the federated governance, and we'll start to show a little bit of this. This is where like control over who's doing what, who's building what, and how that gets managed that starts to come into place. Okay. Now, there are some big challenges that come with this. As you can imagine, this is not a low cost infrastructure solution, right? This was designed, if you go by like the strict structures of like what we're talking about across all these different domains and all these different areas. What this means is you're going to have data engineering. You're going to have analytics engineers. You're going to have report writers. You're going to have QA people. You're going to have support people across all these different domains inside your organization. Now, if you're talking about an organization that has, you know, 10,000 people building out content and, a few thousand data engineers, this makes a ton of sense, right? Unfortunately, that is not the reality for everyone. In fact, that's not the reality for most organizations, right? That's where a more pragmatic view starts to come into play, where you're most likely going to have a handful of domains with a centralized team that's working together to provide that governance, to provide those resources, and to provide that structure for people to engage. Okay. And it's not that it can't be done. It's just what level are people engaging with? Again, oh, why are you doing this to me? Again, if we go back to our data as a product, it may be that your enterprise team provides 90% of the enterprise content that goes out to the organization. You have a handful, like one or two departments that provide stuff, and potentially they partake in the data mesh in conjunction with the enterprise team. And then everyone else operates at these kind of lower tiers where, you know what? Yeah, you let them throw out a lake house and you share shortcuts. You let them build out some data flows and piggyback on semantic models and make their own custom reports because you're fine with that, right? Like you're totally okay with them managing who attended the Christmas party in 2020 in their own lake house. You don't need to have that inside of the enterprise lake house, right? You're totally cool with letting them do that, right? Um, but you're going to end up seeing that is more of what happens in most organizations, all right? And especially because when it comes down to it, Fabric is not going to provide everything necessary for this to be successful. Okay, so it's going to be Fabric and. All right, so Fabric and, I mean, Purview will help a little bit on governance, but there's going to be something there, even if it's just process, even if it's just, oh, all my lights went off. It's past my auto shut off time because it's late here.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Well, you look great still.
Well, thank you. I just noticed that. Oh, all right. All right. So let's go. Let's get into the demo. All right. Now I'm gonna quick run through how we did this, but then I'm gonna rapidly get into showing you all of these things. Okay. So first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we design the data mesh, right, that we're gonna have. So in this case that we talked about, um, what the heck is going on here? In this case, we're gonna have three different domains that we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about our marketing domain, our sales domain, and then our global. Our global being the IT central managed stuff. We'll talk about how marketing will manage some of the aspects inside their domain, and sales will manage others, and how they'll all work together. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to design it out. We're going to kind of lay out, okay, of our data assets that we're talking about, what is the marketing domain? what is that global domain, and where is that sales domain? We, if you're lucky, if you're in a position like what we're doing inside this demo data set, kind of becomes easy to see like, okay, any shared assets get managed globally through governance and to make sure that sales doesn't implement breaking changes to marketing and marketing doesn't implement breaking changes to sales. But these central assets can be all managed in one place, but they can be easily accessed and used by others. These are classically your conforming dimensions. All right. So my conforming dimensions in this place are currency, date, product category, product subcategory, promotion, sales territory, where my sales team has reseller sales, dim employee, and dim reseller, where my marketing team has internet sales, customer, and geography as part of what they own. All right. Now, this is a very simplified version because we're talking about working inside of the AdventureWorks data set, but you're going to look to follow a similar domain-based pattern for how you share and manage your data. All right. Now, next thing we do is we really focus in on as simple as possible security structure that we want to have, which is going to be we've got admins who create content for my domain, and we've got readers who consume that read from that mesh in my domain. So I'll quick run through creation of that. We'll go through creating our domains and the different settings that we do inside of there. We'll go through then populating, and if things go well, we'll actually rebuild out one of my domains, so you can see how easy it is to get there. And then we'll show how we go from front end content, making sure that each domain has content in place that is properly branded. So when you're sharing content, even though everyone is part of the same organization, it's very easy for people to see who is the owner of the content that's being shared with visual cues and characteristics, like for example, the color border that is on our reports. Okay, and with that, I'm done with I'm done with that. We're gonna head right over to our we're gonna head over to Power BI actually. So this is my data model. And I kind of showed you how I did that before, but I basically took my data model in order to establish my first domains. Is I focused in on the two areas that I wanted to have wanted two areas that wanted ownership of my data: my sales team, and then my oh my, that's yeah, that's built right, and my marketing team. Right, my sales team sells to the resellers, like they're actively engaged with that. Our marketing team owns the sales that goes through our internet sales, right? So we've created a business use case logical breakout of those items. As part of that, anything that is specific to that fact table that is from internet sales is owned by that domain. So in this case, it's customer and it's geography. All right. So this type of thing will really help you when it comes to defining who owns different dimensions, because if there's no relationship, while the sales team may want to say that they own customer, the reality is our sales team in this case really only owns reseller, with reseller being the primary point that they own and that they have engaged with, right?
Really quick
um
question for you, Chris.
yeah.
Just for my clarity's sake, when you're mentioning these different teams are owning these dimensions and tables, do you have them broken out then by data flows and then they own those data flows? Or is it more like, hey, here's our lines in the sand in this specific semantic model?
Well, that's a great question. Why don't I show that to you?
All right. Maybe you're already going to say it, so sorry for stealing your thunder.
It's all right. We'll forgive you this once, Greg. All right. Next thing we want to do is we want to head into we want to head over to Azure Active Directory. Actually, what I did is I first head into my notebook, and I created what are the groups that I'm going to be creating here. So I want to have a common naming convention so it's easy for me to manage it. So in this case, I zoom in, I can. I've got my mesh global admins and my global reads, right? So these are the global resources that I'm going to have. This is going to have no PHI or PII data in there, right? So I'm going to have no security concerns around people accessing or using anything that's considered in my global space, right? So I'm going to put that there. I'm going to create those AD groups. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create groups for my sales team, my marketing team, and you see I got a little more aggressive in what I thought I was going to be able to do for the demo. I created an IT group too. I didn't get to that was part of this. But first things first, I want to go in and create these items inside of Active Directory. Okay. Now, in here, I've already got these mesh groups created. I'm going to show you how you create a group just in case you've not done this before. It's easy as no group. Well, in fact, what we'll do is we'll do sales admin. We're going to create a new one. Call this one _R. Does anyone have any idea what data mesh admin _R is?
Rock on. Anybody else? Ooh, he's typing it.
Yeah, so this is going to be your restricted data, right? So we're going to create the restricted data group. So this would contain something like, I don't know, things that you don't want people to necessarily be able to go out and see as part of the default role. This could be new compensation plans. This could be new calculations that you're starting to put together that's not quite ready for prime time, but maybe you want some leaders to look at or analysts to engage in, right? So I'm going to create that R group for my admin.
Quick question again, Chris,
Yeah,
and maybe it's more of a comment, but using that R group, can you use that R group, I mean, for not only for doing row level security, but object level security?
that is exactly right. In fact, this is specifically for object level security and who's able to see the objects inside of this schema, right? So
Does everybody
uh,
know what object level security is? Or would you like me to drop a link in the chat?
it would be great if you dropped the link, but
Okay.
I'm going to describe everything that goes along with this version of restricted access. All right. And again, anytime you create your groups, you're always going to make sure that you assign an owner and you assign a member. Remember, being an owner does not mean you have access like a member would. So maybe that's good. Like you want your manager to control who's part of the admins, like the IT manager, but you don't want the IT manager to have access to actually do anything because that guy, like me, doesn't know much, right? You don't want to give me free access and stuff, but I know who works for me and I could approve those people going in and be able to do stuff, right? But once I've got that created, and in this case, I would actually go out and we're going to go to the next piece. We're going to go in and we're going to create a new domain. Okay. So this is, I created my sales domain is already out there. So in order to get to this, it's easy to just head into your settings when you're on Fabric. You go to the admin portal here, and then under domains, you can see all the items right here. Now, I'm going to create that new domain. This is sales restricted. Right. And I'm going to assign my domain admins to that. So, ooh, not my read R. Oh, there we go. Sales admin R are created as part of that. Now, in my my domain is created. I close that off. Inside my settings here, I'm going to make sure that I give it an image. so that it kind of appears right with the sales stuff. I want it to be akin to that. You know what? I want it to be same color tones, but I'll make it look a little bit different so people have some degree of understanding when they're not in that domain. All right, I'll hit apply. Good, good, good. Now I can, if I want, I can start to adjust who's contributors here. Now I would recommend it's the same R group are your contributors, right? And you apply that to it. Okay. Now this is up and ready. Now that this is available, I want to create my workspaces for this domain. All right. Now I'm going to have two different workspaces I'm going to be using for restricted, and I'm going to separate them based upon my my big usage patterns. And when I think about the hats I wear, I have two big hats that I'm concerned with. Number one, my data engineering hat, and number two, my report consumption hat, my analyst hat. I'm going to create two workspaces to go along with this. So I'm going to say sales data restricted. I'm going to make sure that I assign it to the, cancel that, refresh my screen, because when you create a domain, you have to refresh in order if you're going to create a new one to get the new domain there. There we go. So I'm going to create a data restricted, which I'm going to set on a trial capacity. I'm going to say apply. And within here, I want to manage access. I want to add people again. I want to add, oh, come on, man. Come on, man.
Come on, man. Let's go, man.
Let's go. There we go. All right. I want to make sure I add in my admin group as admins to it. And then I know I'm good to go. So I can go back. And I can actually see, like, hey, you know what? I can remove me from there because I'm a member of the admin group, so this is all good to go. Because I never ever want to leave individual user names on things, so I'm always gonna pull that off. Now, next thing I'm gonna want to do is, and this gets right to this is where we come and we actually put on our other hat here. It's our data engineering hat. And we go back into that workspace. This is where we're going to be building out our pipelines and the content that is going to go into this space. Now, as a domain owner, you're going to be responsible for pipelines, for lake houses, warehouses, semantic models, reports, all of that stuff, how you're going to set that up. So we're going to now go in and create our first pipeline for this, right? So when we name stuff, we always follow a common naming convention, which this is my sales restricted data pipeline, or create it. And hopefully this will go as smoothly as it did in practice. But now I'm just going to use my copy because all my stuff happens to be on-prem. And I really love my new fast copy because fast copy means any place where I have an existing gateway in place, I can just like, use fast copy pretty much if it's SQL Server to just bring it in. So I'm going to say SQL Server. I'm going to choose where it's going to go. I'm going to figure out my gateway. I'm going to find my database on there. Good to go there. I'm going to go to next. This is going to make the connection and it's going to go through and it's going to ask, what are we going to be pulling from it? Is it going to be tables or am I going to write a query on this? Now, in this case, I actually have some dim employer RLS because I want this security content, something that I have in flight right now. I'm still testing out the security that I'm thinking I'm going to implement as like dynamic row level security. So I'm going to roll this in because my users haven't had dynamic row level security before. So I'm going to build this out and start to test this from inside my workspace to make sure that it's working appropriately, make sure it works right in my models. And then when the time comes, I'm going to plan to move this out of the restricted space and it's going to go into my employee space. Okay, so That might be months from now as I tinker with this and play with this. So I'm going to keep this in my restricted workspace. For now, it's just going to be this individual. Well, to give me something to do or to make sure you can see how this works. We're going to choose one more table. We're going to choose dim employee, and the dim employee goes to factory seller sales. So we'll do that. Or not dim customer, dim employee, and factory seller sales. So note, the only table I really want would be the employee RLS, and in fact, Mesh would say I wouldn't load those. The only reason I'm adding these in right now is to show you how you can make these connections as part of the demo. I would not normally do this, okay? Just be clear. In fact, you know what? Screw it. I'm not going to do it. We're just doing it. I'll show you the other component of it. All right. So I'm going to say next. This is the table. Where is it going to go? I want it to go to my lake house. All right, so I'm going to choose lake house. I'm not going to load it to Snowflake. I'm going to load it into my lake house. That's going to be a new one. So this is going to be my sales restricted lake house. And I always type with spaces and then come back and put in underscores because I can never remember what allows for spaces and not. So when it fails, I do that. But then I hit next. And this is going to load to a new table because it didn't. You could choose to load to an existing. You chose, well, I can't because there's nothing there. But when you choose load to existing, it says you want to append or replace. You choose that. I could, if I wanted, I could go in and I could make some changes to these data types if I wanted to. In this case, I have no desire to do that. I'm just going to leave this as is. Okay. No, the other big advantage of fast copy is you create a lake house with camel case field names, something you can't natively do. It lower cases everything. You just go through the other like load processes. So I'm a fan of that. I hit save and run. You'd think that I'd be done and this would just run. You'd think that, but you'd be wrong. It's gonna pop up and ask me another question first. I think. Oh, it did not. Yay! It used to pop up and ask you a question if you really want to load it. Like, yes, that's why we chose fast copy. But it's now all loaded. This is fantastic. I can go back into my model and I can see I've got my sales restricted data pipelines. Lakehouse is all here. A new thing I've started to do, because I don't know why, but I've started to see all sort of miscellaneous assets start to appear inside of my workspaces that I don't necessarily want to look at all the time. So I just put a folder for miscellaneous, and anytime I see an object out here that I don't want to look at because it's not important to me, I just move it into miscellaneous, and then I don't have to worry about it anymore. All right. Plus, it keeps everything looking very clean and orderly. Okay. So I've created it right here for the restricted. I'm going to come back to this in just a second, but I want to show you that I've got the same thing in place for my global data. So I've got my miscellaneous folder, my global data pipeline, my lakehouse, my semantic model, my SQL endpoint. And I've got the same thing in place for, come on now. I've got the same thing in place for my sales data. All right. So all of these things have been put together. Oh, and my marketing. All of these exist and they all follow the exact same patterns. Okay. None of them have data that overlaps. They all have their own unique data. But marketing needed to have more than just marketing data. Because if I look at my marketing lakehouse, I'm going to see that I have more than what I thought. Because what I've done is I've already created links, and you can kind of see them here. I've started to go in and get shortcuts to other data that is not part of marketing because I needed more than just the fact internet sales to get the job done. I needed my reseller sales, right? What's more, in my SQL endpoint, I needed more than just these shared objects. I needed to create some views. The views needed to have some specific dimensionality to them. They needed to have some other content in place here. So actually, I've got some view definitions that are out there. So my date dimension is out there. And if you're wondering, this date dimension, what it does is it just uses AdventureWorks data, which is from like, I don't know, like 1880, or I don't know what year it's from, but it brings it to current. So the state dimension, it's the classic one, but I want to have I want to leverage this view. So I created these views out inside of my warehouse, and now these views are inside of my model and connected so that I could actually build a report off of this model that includes those links. And you say to yourself, okay, Chris, I think I get it, but can you show me exactly how that works? And that's a great idea. Why don't I do that? Right. So if I go into my sales restricted warehouse, I can see I just have my one table. Right. Come on in. Hello, computer. Hello, computer. Oh, come on. What the heck?
Come on, computer.
Yeah, come on. All right. Well, so is it not empty? Well, I'm not going to troubleshoot this one. I'm going to go into this experience here. Let's take a look at my. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go into my sales. Where'd my sales? Workspaces, sales data. I'm going to go into my reseller lakehouse. And as you can see, I just have inside of my reseller lakehouse my dim employee, my dim reseller, my fact reseller, which is exactly what I'd expect. That's all that this domain owns are those objects. Okay. Well, I'm going to want to pull in more. So that's where we're going to go. And we're going to go to get data. And that's where we're going to we're going to use some new shortcuts. Okay. So I'm going to go out. I'm going to look for data that's been shared to me. I'm going to head into OneLake. And I'm going to find my promoted lake houses that are out there that I'm currently going to want to get information from. So my reseller lake house, clearly I don't want to use its own one. That's a bug. I don't want to use my own lake house to share to myself. I want to use my global lake house. So I'm going to say global lake house and next. And I'm going to go in and find the tables that I want to share. Right? In this case, I want all of them. I want to share all of them. So I'm going to say, okay, next. And if I wanted to, here's where I could do some things like I want to change the names of it or something along those lines. I don't want to do any of that stuff because it's just going to create confusion. I'm going to leave those names there. Now I'm going to create those shortcuts. Those shortcuts are now going to appear right inside of my model. And I can even flip over to from my Lakehouse view to my SQL Analytics view and see, hey, look at that. I've got all those models or all these views are in place. Yay. So it's more than just the products. It's more than just the items that I have. Now I'm starting to truly take advantage of the mesh. Well, here's where something is a little missing that's not quite in place that I would love to be there. It's not there today, but maybe someday. Come on, stupid stop sharing thing. Remember how in my reseller lake house, I had already defined some views? Where the heck did it go? Well, what in Sam Hill? Here it is. Oh, marketing. In marketing, I'd already defined the views. I'm going to pull those into global. Today, I don't have a mechanism to share these views or share these assets with other people. Be great, wouldn't that be to share that out? Unfortunately, I can't. So I'm gonna build or devise a mechanism to share uh, better than what I just did. But I'm just gonna create a new query, and I'm gonna copy and paste those items over that are important. So in this case, it's the DBO be dim date. I'm going to run this. I'm going to create that one. And when I look over, I'm also going to want my fact reseller sales. Again, remember, like this, to me, this doesn't even necessarily like encounter the, like, this hasn't even entered in on the suck, okay, great, because there's no mechanism to share. So, I mean, maybe it's suck, I don't know. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to create this. Now, anytime I create a view, I'm going to make sure that I go up and I rename my query to what it is. I'm going to always want to do my create statement. It's my create. Rename that. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to do the same thing. Copy, rename. Excuse me. Paste. Oh, all right. I'm going to rename those and then make sure, please, 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 you share those queries so that other admins on your infrastructure could see this and this becomes available for them. Okay. Now I'm going to go in, and this is something you really need to make sure you do is you go in and add these items to your default semantic model. Okay. And do the same thing right here. All right. Once those things are in place, head over to model. And there's a few things I want to first do. Number one, go all the way over to the end and make sure that these stored expressions, this metadata about execution requests, session history, frequently all that stuff, hide those in your model. You don't need those by default. That's not something you're going to need to have access to. Okay. Um, the other thing I'm going to do is this factory seller sales. You can see that I'd already actually kind of put in a couple keys on it, but I don't want that to be used in my actual reports because I've got my view that view is actually better for my purposes. So I'm going to hide that so I don't accidentally start to use it. Now, take it from me. The way you want to build this out is one table at a time as you do your joins. So in this case, I'm going to define my date dimensions. And inside the UI, we are always, always, always going to drag from the fact table over to the dimension table. We're never going to do anything other than that because bad juju happens. And I don't know what that bad juju would entail, but I'm always going to go one way to the other, okay? In this case, well, normally I'd want to assume referential integrity. If I was going to build this out, I'd test it for that. But in this case, we'll not. But we're going to define my reseller date from order date key to date key, making sure that that works many to one, and make this active. I'll set that up. I'll then go down to my ship date key and define that. Again, making sure ship date key and date key are inside of my view. This UI definitely falls into either, I mean, it's starting to get into the okay, but there's parts of it that suck. And this experience kind of sucks right now. I spent a painful 20 minutes trying to figure out what was wrong, only to realize that for whatever reason, it wasn't going ship date to date key. So you can see it over in the side here in this new properties tab, but the UI should work and doesn't necessarily always. I'm gonna then go and do my due date key, pull that in again, making sure everything is right. Because if you have one of these that's not right, the join will establish, but you won't, and everything will save and you'll think it's fine. You will not be able to create a report off of this, right? Ah, son of a nutcracker. Then I'm going to realize that I did that with dim date and not the view dim date. So, like, I have to do the whole thing again. So I'm going to just go in and just do the one and call that even. And then I'm going to hide the dim date from my model so I don't have to worry about that. All right. So pay no attention to the other one. Now I'll just quickly add in my employee key. And we'll just be done with that. The nice thing about this view is if you look at the factory sellers table, is it only has the product key. It doesn't have the category or subcategory. Pulling those onto your fact table makes it more performant, makes it work better, and in your reports. So it is a change I really like. So once this is in, I start to be like, okay, hey, I could go in and I could start to create measures and I could do a visual query, but I'm gonna like stop that. Next thing I could do on here is I could start to go in and create a report. Okay. Now, oh, come on. I've already got in place my marketing reports are here. Right. So I've got a marketing report that's up, it's working, it works out great. This marketing report takes advantage of all three areas of my mesh. So inside of this model, I've got data from my fact reseller sales, I've got data from my fact internet sales, and I've got my global dimensions in here as well. Everything's here, it interacts, it works just fine, just as it would with Power Query, right? So everything is running and it's connected live back in direct link mode back to the warehouse. And as you can see, I mean, I don't know if it could get snappier than this, but this is pretty good for my data. This is my marketing. I want to do the same thing with my sales. I'm going to go in and I'm going to follow that same pattern, right? Like uh, I want my sales content to be formatted appropriately. But anyone who's coming in and using my data can all pull from that same content and be good to go. Why did my model not save? Uh, oh, save it. Ah, oh no, this is not the name of the report I wanted. Don't save it for now. Oh, that's my restricted. Am I in the wrong place? What did I just do? Oh, for the love of Pete. Reseller. Okay, so this is my apologies. So this is the warehouse I created. This is what I just put together. If I go and I look at my model, I've got all of these items available. If I go and say, okay, create a new report off of this lake house, why do I just have the two? All right, I've got these. Hey, data gods, why are you doing this to me? Okay, let me. Interesting. Well, for whatever reason, my semantic model here. Oh, that way I just have the two. Interesting. Oh, I got to add it to the model. Oh, because the linked items. No wonder it wasn't there. So I add in my linked tables as I want. Oh, I'd already. I see. So you have to go in and add them in now. Well, so we just have those three tables created. My bad. Now when I create a report, I'll have the three tables and the fourth that I added. Good. I could go in and I can add in my background again. Sales open, hit 0. And now I could start to go in from my fact table and I could start to build out similar types of information. So I could look at my sales amount, flip it into my smart visual. Oh, where's my smart visual? Smart KPIs not in the experience stuff? Interesting. Uh, what are where'd my report go? All right, so I can build the exact same thing. Freight, API, order quantity, and total product cost. Right, so I've added those in. I've got the same functionality here. I can now take this. I can change this into like a period chart, and I can put in my date dimension on here, full date, alternative key on my x-axis. And I could start to flesh out the exact same values that I had, exact same values that were in my coming through in marketing is now coming through in my sales report. The same dimensionality with the same functionality. If I make a change in one place, that change is going to automatically be in the other. But I can now still use those same assets over and over again, regardless of who owns them. But the domain owner, go back to the domain owner, owns all of these items, right? They own the pipeline, they own the lake house, they own the warehouse, and they own the semantic model, and they own that distribution. All right. With that, next steps for you are please spend some more time looking at and thinking about data mesh inside your organization. Go out and start to create some domains. So you saw me do it. It was relatively straightforward and easy enough to either add new domains into it, or even if you go in, you can actually choose to add domains to it. But for your organization itself, define what is data as a product going to mean. Is it truly just the semantic models that you provide out? Is it the objects underneath it? Is it the joins? How are you going to do it? What is that contract like at your organization? So define that product, define what self-service means, and then talk with your governance about how you can start to leverage that inside your organization. All right?
That was a very straightforward, simple, and elegant way, I think, to take a really complex topic that is like textbook heavy and distill it to something pretty simple. I really liked your demo with the sales marketing global. I liked how you showed all the vernacular of how to like do the tables and the entities all the way to those restricted tables. Chris, you rocked it.
Well, thank you. And any questions in chat or anyone? We're good here?
Robin, do you have a question?
Both. Okay.
Okay.
We'll say both. First off, great demo.
Oh,
Secondly, I feel like we're not talking enough about centers of excellence when we talk about data mesh.
Yep.
And I worry that many companies are unknowingly venturing back to the world of everyone bringing their own Excel report to the meetings. So
Yeah.
I guess my question is, do you see that becoming more of a joint topic as we go forward, or how is that going to be handled?
Yeah, I think data meshes could be one of those big key central players inside of that triangle. And governance is held together with that center of excellence and those contracts for how we work and operate together. So like one of those contract items are, I'm not going to duplicate data outside of your space, right? Like I'm going to work with you on anything that I need as part of the product, and you are going to work with me to provide that, right? And
Absolutely.
that's going to be a big component that we need to have people talking about and doing. But the nice thing about having it all in one place is at a governance level, you can actually see it. You could see who's violating the contract. You could put in rules, you could put in policies around it. You could say, hey, sales guy, I know you own your domain, but you're copying marketing data, and that violates our terms and agreements. Like, so if you want to lose the ability to do this, keep doing that. Otherwise, you've got to stop. Right.
Thank
But
you.
I think it also plays a role on like that sales guy then being the champion for the marketing team to get more resources. right? Because that's why IT has never been able to like keep pace, right? They never have enough resources. That just means we're all going to need to have more resources, more abilities. We're going to have to send more people to training, but we're going to have to empower them and trust them as part of that.
I think the
Yeah.
reality is more people are going to have to wear those hats, right?
Yep.
Like more people are going to need to get that data gene
Yep.
and lean into their data estate, and be stewards, not only of just, hey, like you're using your systems correctly, but you're using the analytics and leaning into the analytics, because that's the only way we all bring this together, you know.
Completely
And it's
agree.
and it's not just for the enterprises, right? I think even the mid-market and above, not just like fully going into data mesh architecture, but being that steward. And even I think taking bits and pieces of what you've shown. I think the ideas of domains is fantastic. But starting to draw some lines between who's doing what and what does IT actually own.
And that's where IT comes in with those certifications, with the governance and domain, right? Like I truly think like, hey, if you're talking enterprise scale, like put some definitions around like what can be an enterprise and what can be truly certified. Can you create a Power Query that goes into a data flow that's certified? Or maybe in your organization, the best that you can have with that is promoted. And if you need it to be certified, it has to be moved into a cloud scalable enterprise supported notebook and pipeline for that to move forward. And it's those types of decisions that your centers of excellence are going to have to go out and craft, because maybe I'm way off. Maybe it's nothing in pipelines and nothing in notebooks. It's all in Power Query. I mean, if Alex Powers was here, he'd be saying everything in Power Query. So,
Power Query magic, man.
right.
That is for sure.
Well, thank you guys for making
Thank
this the
you.
best day ever. You guys are the best. Thanks a lot.
You're the best. Later. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.